Here is Whitehouse, and he did this really well. I think I said this at the beginning of the show today. He did this very well with the whole arc of essentially the Janus case. It was the Friedrich case before then, but basically how the Supreme Court stripped away the agency fee for unions, further weakening unions in this country. Obviously, unions have been decimated, but in this instance, to the extent that there was a stronghold for unions, it was in the public sector. And the agency fee strips them of a lot of resources. Here is Sheldon Whitehouse doing the same thing, but in this instance, he's doing it with conservative, the way that the relationship between the conservative legal movement, the judiciary, work. And he cites Janus in here, and he also cites the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau.
In all cases, there's big anonymous money behind various lanes of activity. One lane of activity is through the conduit of the Federalist Society. It's was managed by a guy named Leonard Leo, and it's taken over the selection of judicial nominees. How do we know that to be the case? Because Trump has said so over and over again. His White House counsel said so. So we have an anonymously funded group controlling judicial selection run by this guy, Leonard Leo. Then in another lane, we have, again, anonymous funders running through something called the Judicial Crisis Network, which is run by Carrie Severino, and it's doing PR and campaign ads for Republican judicial nominees.
Tens of millions of dollars spent on Brett Kavanaugh.
Single $17 million donation in the Garland-Gorsuch contest. It got another single $17 million donation to support Kavanaugh. Somebody, perhaps the same person, spent $35 million to influence the makeup of the United States Supreme Court. Tell me that's good. And then over here, you have a whole array of legal groups, also funded by dark money, which have a different role. They bring cases to the court. They don't wind their way to the court, Your Honor. They get shoved to the court by these legal groups, many of which ask to lose below so they can get quickly to the court to get their business done there. The Center for Media and Democracy saw it, and they did better work. They went on to say which foundations funded the brief writers in that CFPB case. Here's the Bradley Foundation for $5.6 million to those groups. Here's Donors Trust, $23 million to those brief writing groups. The grand total across all the donor groups was $68 million to the groups that were filing amicus briefs, pretending that they were different groups. And it's not just in the Consumer Financial Protection Board case. You might say, well, that was just a one-off. Here's Janus, the anti-labor case that had a long trail through the court, through Friedrichs and through Knox and through other decisions.
Pause it for 1 second. So just to be clear here, he went through the Janus stuff today, and if we don't play it, maybe I'll just do it as a separate entity. Maybe I'll tag it on to the end of the member show and put it on YouTube, because it really does really show exactly that how the right's just enormous money advantage, and we're in an era now where we have the ability to fund candidates. And people are doing that. But the right has the ability to fund a massive machine that basically converts the Supreme Court from, just the sort of already, I think, problematic 9-person legislature, essentially, into just basically a machine. And they put inputs at one end of it, and it takes a while, but then they get the outputs they want out of the other end of it. It's not perfect. 70% of the time, maybe it works. They just shove it into like this, you could just imagine one of those sort of funnels, and they just shove the stuff in there, and it goes through the system and it poops out the other end. And, whatever their returns are, they get those returns. Continue. Let's listen to a little more.
And SourceWatch and ProPublica did some work about this. Here's Donors Trust and Donors Capital Fund, and here's the Bradley Foundation, and they totaled giving $45 million to the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 groups that filed amicus briefs pretending to be different groups, and both of the lawyer groups in the case. Funded by Donors Trust, funded by Bradley Foundation in Janus. This is happening over and over and over again, and it goes beyond just the briefs. It goes beyond just the amicus presentations. The Federalist Society, remember this group that is acting as the conduit and that Donald Trump has said is doing his judicial selection? They're getting money from the same foundations. From Donors Trust, $16.7 million. From the Bradley Foundation, $1.37 million. From the same group of foundations total, $33 million. So you can start to look at these and you can start to tie them together. The legal groups, all the same funders over and over again, bringing the cases and providing this orchestrated chorus of amici. Then the same group also funds the Federalist Society over here. The Washington Post wrote a big expose about this, and that made Leonard Leo a little hot, a little bit like a burned agent. So he had to jump out, and he went off to go and do anonymously funded voter suppression work. Guess who jumped in to take over the selection process in this case for Judge Barrett? Carrie Severino made the hop. So once again, ties right in together.
I mean, there's both, I think, a lot for all of us to understand, to know that that's what's happening here with this system, that it's not a coincidence these cases show up there. And now, like I say, both sides, to some extent, have an apparatus where they look for plaintiffs because they want to test certain cases with the court. But this is a end-to-end machine with the right in this country, and it's going to end up being a meat grinder for people. In addition to that, and I think also, I don't know that it works, but I think Sheldon Whitehouse is also maybe hoping that maybe Amy Coney Barrett is not aware when he went through the Janus thing, that maybe she's just not, I don't know if he thinks that she's that naive or not, probably not, but it's possible that he thinks that, like, look, maybe this will tug at her. To just see it laid out in 4 or 5 minutes, like you are a cog in this machine, and you should know that every case that you look at that is going to have any relevance for society, or at least a broad relevance for society, is not a coincidence. It doesn't wind its way up through the courts. There isn't a plaintiff out there who has a complaint and then goes seeks it. It is the opposite. Plaintiffs are found. It doesn't wind its way through the courts. Jurisdictions are picked. And then you have these, when they know there's a conservative Supreme Court, they say, let us lose as soon as we can. We are the plaintiffs. We want to lose at this level so that we can rise to the Supreme Court, because we know that we have gotten signals from the justices in past dissents and in past rulings that they are amenable to a case just like this. And we have fashioned this case according to their edicts. And so it arrives and then it's over. And so I don't know. There's value in that for me, but from a political standpoint, getting back to the debate I just beat John at, I don't think there's a huge political value to that long term, or broadly speaking. I think there's a lot of other oxes to gore at this point.
Really? Because I think it definitely has value to show the degree to which the courts are a nakedly political sham, at least on the part of the Republicans. The Democrats are still trying to pretend that they're not, and really probably believe it. Like, I think that helps to delegitimize the court. enabling the kind of reforms you've been talking about, and, eroding people's faith in the system, which needs to change.
Right. But I mean, I could have had, I mean, like, he
you didn't need to do this stuff.
Right. He could have put out a video. I mean, that's my point. You don't need that for him, but I agree.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, like, I'm going to take that thing. I'm going to take both of his clips and try and disseminate it, widely and have people pass them around. But I'm just saying, you don't need it. You didn't need to sort of like, you could have gotten more political mileage out of that and replicated that somewhere else.
Oh yeah, certainly. I agree. They should not have showed up. I'm on your side in that debate. The normal rules of debate and discourse and, all those D words, they don't apply here. And I mean, I don't think they ever did, but those contradictions are definitely becoming heightened so more and more people can tell.
I want more content like this from Whitehouse too. Like, I think that this should be a regular thing from Democrats. And I know that they've done some of this before, but like, this should be a regular, like, we should see a regular report issued on the influence of money on the judiciary and politics in general.
Definitely.